Picture a machine. Not a factory machine, not an engine, but a machine made of coal and brass and black lead and one pair of 15-year-old hands. Now fill it with smells. Soot falling softly inside 6 chimneys, mutton fat going cold in a dripping jar, damp wallpaper paste behind the parlour piano, a privy at the end of a garden 40 feet long. Add a cellar with less coal in it than the mistress will admit, a gas bracket that hisses like something alive, and a front doorstep so white that the whole street judges the household by it every single morning. That's an ordinary middle-class home in the year 1900. 6 rooms, a scullery and an attic, in a terrace of houses so alike that drunk men regularly try their latchkeys in the wrong door. A place of starched lace curtains and secret arithmetic. A place where the family upstairs eats roast beef on Sunday while the girl downstairs eats standing up. And where you could scald your arm on a copper of boiling laundry in the morning and hand round thin bread and butter to visitors in white gloves by afternoon. We're going back there tonight, not as tourists admiring the aspidistra and the antimacassars. We're living it. 1 year, 1 house, 1 pair of hands, everything they would have seen, smelled, scrubbed, carried, burned, broken, and survived. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I have no clue if anyone actually sleeps to them, or if you're all just weirdos who like hearing about chamber pots and blacklead, and what a middle-class family did when the coal ran short. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. Your eyes open to darkness. For a moment, maybe half a second, you've forgotten where you are. Then it hits you. The smell. It's not just one smell. It's layers. Cold soot drifting down the attic chimney that hasn't held a fire since the house was built. Yesterday's mutton fat, risen up the back stairs from the kitchen and settled into the walls like a tenant. Damp distemper. That chalky, mushroomy smell of a north-facing room where the window is nailed against the fog. Paraffin from the little lamp you're not supposed to keep burning. And underneath it all, the smell of a body that gets 1 proper bath a week in a tin tub in the scullery, and that body is yours. Welcome to 9 Milton Road, Herne Hill, South London, in April of the year 1900. You're lying on a flock mattress on an iron bedstead, in an attic 9 feet long and 7 feet wide, directly under the roof slates, above the bedroom of a 12-year-old girl who's allowed to sleep until 8. The mattress is lumpy. The lumps have names by now. There's the big one under your left shoulder that you call the church, and the ridge under your hip that you call the railway embankment. You know them the way you're coming to know this whole house, in the dark, by touch. Your name is Ellen Draper. You're 15 years old, and you arrived here 8 weeks ago from Paddock Wood, in Kent, with a tin box, a Bible from your mother, and a written character from the vicar's wife saying you were honest, clean and willing. £12 a year and your keep. That's the wage. Back home, everyone said London service would either make you or break you. They weren't wrong. They just didn't say it would try to do both before breakfast. The alarm clock on the chair beside your bed says 6:15. It cost 1 shilling and 11 pence, and it is the only thing in this room, apart from the tin box under the bed, that belongs to you. You silence it with the speed of a girl strangling a chicken, because directly below you Miss Beatrice is asleep, and below her nobody in this house is supposed to know that the morning has started. That's the first rule, and nobody ever says it out loud. The house must look as if it cleans itself. You lie there for exactly 10 more seconds, which is the ration you allow yourself, and you listen. The house ticks and settles around you. A dropping of soot somewhere inside the parlour flue, soft as a bird landing. the cistern above the bathroom giving its single sullen gulp, wind working at the loose slate over the landing. That's the house breathing. You've learned to hear it the way a sailor hears his ship, and you've learned the difference between the house breathing and the house going wrong. Because when the house goes wrong, it's you who answers for it. Outside, far off, a train. The 5:52 from Herne Hill Station, rolling empty carriages up toward Holborn Viaduct to fetch the day's clerks. Nearer, the grind and chime of the first milk cart and the milkman's low whistle. 2 notes. Always the same 2 notes. In an hour the street will be all boots and bells and tradesmen's boys. Right now it belongs to the cats and the milk cart and you. You need to get up. The range will have your hide if it isn't lit, and Mrs. Ashworth will have whatever the range leaves. The floor is cold under your bare feet. Not cool. Cold. The specific cold of bare boards in a room where the water in your washstand jug grew a skin of ice twice this past winter. Also Ada next door swears her attic did, and yours is meaner than hers. You break the surface of the water with your knuckles out of habit, though it's April now and there's no ice, only cold, and you wash your face and neck and hands fast, gasping, the way you've washed every morning of your life. The soap is a hard yellow heel of sunlight, worn to the size of a chestnut. You get a new bar when this one is gone, and Mrs. Ashworth knows to the day how long a bar should last. Your clothes are on the chair where you left them, laid in order like a fireman's because the order is the speed. Woolen stockings darned at both heels with wool that doesn't quite match. A print dress in lilac cotton, washed so many times the flowers have faded to ghosts. This is your morning dress, your dirty work dress. There's a black one hanging on the door for the afternoons, when you must be clean and silent and open the front door to visitors, and the change from print to black at midday is the change from one girl into another. Same hands, different girl. Then the apron, coarse sacking for the range work, and over your hair, a cap. The cap matters more than you'd believe. It marks you. A girl in a cap and apron is a general servant, a maid of all work, one small step above the charwoman who comes on Mondays, and one enormous, unbridgeable step below everybody else she will speak to all day. Appearances matter in this street. They matter more than almost anything, and not only for you. That's the thing you're only beginning to understand about the middle classes. They're not resting on top of the world. They're clinging to the side of it, and the doorstep, the curtains, the cap, the black dress in the afternoon. All of it is grip. You take your candle and you go down through the sleeping house. And this is the part no one ever sees. The part that happens in every one of these houses along every one of these streets. Tens of thousands of girls in the dark on tens of thousands of stairs, each one moving like a thief in the house she keeps alive. Down the attic stair, which is bare wood, and has a creak on the second step that you skip by stretching your legs like a heron, past Miss Beatrice's door, past the master bedroom where Mr. and Mrs. Ashworth sleep, and where the bell wire from the front door runs along the picture rail, past the shut door of the second best bedroom that belongs to Master Arthur, who is not in it. Master Arthur is 20 years old, and he is at the war in South Africa, and his room is dusted twice a week as if dust were the enemy holding him there. Down the main stairs with their brass rods and their drugget runner, your candle throwing a great swinging shadow of you up the wall, 3 times your size, the only time all day you will be the biggest thing in the house. Cold air pools in the hall like water. You can smell the umbrellas in the hall stand, wet wool and iron, and the fern on the windowsill and the paraffin of the hall lamp gone out. The letterbox rattles faintly in the wind, and through the coloured glass panel of the front door the gas lamp out in the street lays down lozenges of blue and red on the floor tiles, and for one moment, every morning, it's beautiful, and every morning you have no time for it. Through the door at the end of the passage, covered in green baize to swallow sound, because the sounds of work must not reach the family. Behind that door, the kitchen, your kingdom, your factory, your enemy, your whole day. And in the corner of the kitchen, black and cold and waiting, squats the thing your entire life now revolves around. The range comes first. The range always comes first. The kitchen is 13 feet by 11, floored in flagstones that suck the heat out of your feet straight through your boots, and it faces the back garden, which means it faces north, which means it is never once touched by direct sun. In the middle, a deal table scrubbed so many times the grain stands up in ridges under your fingers, like the bones in the back of a hand. Along one wall, the dresser with the everyday china, willow pattern, chipped in the honest places, and in the chimney recess, filling it, owning it, the kitchen range. A kitchener, the ironmonger's catalogue called it. Cast iron, 4 feet wide, with a fire in the middle, an oven on one side, a water boiler on the other, and a temper all of its own. And when I say the range is your whole day, I need you to understand what that means in 1900. This isn't a cooker. This is the heart of the house. And if it stops, the house dies. Every cup of tea, every breakfast rasher, every Sunday joint, every canful of hot water carried up 3 flights for the family's washstands, every bath, every pudding, every hot water bottle in every bed comes out of this one iron beast, and it burns coal that costs money, and it must be lit by you in the dark every single morning of your life, and it must never, ever look dirty. First you rake it. The riddling handle goes into its socket and you work it back and forth, and last night's cinders crash down into the ashpan with a noise like the end of the world, which is why you do it now, at 6, with the family 2 floors up and a green baize door between you. You sift the cinders, because cinders that will burn again go back on, and only ash goes in the bucket. Coal is bought by the ton and burned by the shovelful, and Mrs. Ashworth can read a week of your habits in an ash bucket. Waste is the sin here. Not idleness. Waste. Then the flues. Once a week, brushes and scrapers into the iron guts of the thing, soot sifting down onto newspaper, into your eyebrows, into the creases of your knuckles where no soap ever quite finds it. This morning it's only the quick pass, but even the quick pass leaves your hands the colour of a collier's. And here's the thing about this particular range, the thing nobody told you and you had to be taught. The damper, the little iron tongue that controls the draft, is worn loose in its slot, and if you set it where the maker intended, the fire sulks and dies. Mrs. Prout, the charwoman, showed you the trick of it in your first week, her thick red hand over yours on the lever. Half a turn past where it catches, then tap the frame twice with the poker till you feel the tongue drop into the worn groove. 1/2 and 2, she said. Don't tell the mistress it's worn, or there'll be a fitter in at 6 shillings, and somehow it'll be you that broke it. 1/2 and 2. You've done it every morning since. The fire's lit sweet every morning since. A house is full of these things, small secret knowledges that live in servants' hands and go out the door with them when they leave. Now the laying. Crumpled newspaper, yesterday's Daily Mail, and it's all war news as it has been for months. Bloemfontein taken, columns of names in small print, and you crumple the names of other people's sons into balls and lay kindling over them in a lattice, then small coal, then the match. The flame creeps, catches, roars softly as you open the damper, half and two, and the first warmth of the day touches your face like something you have to earn, because you did. While the fire climbs, you fill the big iron kettle at the scullery tap and set it on to boil, and you start on the black leading, because a range must not only work, it must shine. Zebra paste out of the tin, worked into the cold iron with one brush, worked off with a second, polished with a third, your whole arm burning from wrist to shoulder, until the black iron gleams like a soldier's boot. 20 minutes, on your knees, every day. Nobody in the family will ever once see you do this. They will only see that it is done, or notice that it is not. That's the bargain of your whole position, and you may as well hear it plainly, the way Mrs. Prout said it to you over the ringer. You are paid to be invisible. The work must be seen. The working must not. The scullery opens off the kitchen, down one step, and it is smaller and meaner and colder, a stone sink under a window looking at the coal shed, a copper in the corner for boiling laundry, a wringer, the tin bath hanging on a nail, and the cold tap. One tap. The house has piped water, which your mother in Paddock Wood still speaks of with wonder. But hot water lives in the range boiler and in your two arms, nowhere else. There's a gas geyser over the bath upstairs, but that's a story for later, and not a friendly one. You scour last night's saucepans with sand and soda, because they were left to soak, and the water is grey and cold and works its way into the cracks of your hands. Your hands, 8 weeks into this life, are already not the hands you brought from Kent. The skin across the knuckles is rough as brick. There's a burn scar starting on your right wrist, pink and shiny from the oven shelf, and a soda crack at the base of your left thumb that opens and stings every washing day and never quite closes before the next one. At church on your Sunday evenings off, you fold your hands one inside the other, small, out of sight. Ada next door says you can read a girl's whole situation off her hands like a page. Ada is 17 and has been in service 4 years and is generally right. Kettle's boiling. You make the first pot of tea of the day, and this pot is yours, the servant's pot, the leaves that will afterwards be dried and used again for sweeping the carpets, because nothing in this house is used only once except the family's time. You drink it standing up at the dresser, with bread and dripping, and it is, you would say if anyone asked you, though nobody will ever ask you, the best moment of the day. The fire settling into a steady red roar, the kettle muttering, the window going from black to grey, warm enough, fed enough, and for 11 minutes, alone enough. Then the house bell above the kitchen door goes off like a trap snapping, one clear furious jangle on its coiled spring, and the 11 minutes are over. That's the master bedroom. That's Mrs. Ashworth awake, and that's the signal the whole machine has been waiting for. Hot water first. 2 brass cans of it dipped steaming out of the range boiler, carried up 2 flights, set outside the master bedroom door with a knock you've been taught to make soft and short. Shaving water for him, washing water for her. Then back down, and now it's the fires. Dining room first, because breakfast is at 8 sharp and the room must be warm by then. Or rather, it must have taken the edge off, because a middle-class dining room in April is heated to the point where you stop seeing your breath and no further. Coal costs. Comfort is Sunday word. You'll meet the dining room properly in a moment, because you're about to spend the first of the 1,000 hours you'll give it this year. But understand the shape of your morning, because the shape is the whole story of this house. Range, hot water, dining room fire, doorstep, breakfast laid, breakfast served, breakfast cleared, beds, slops, bedrooms, stairs, dinner, parlour, tea, supper, dishes, lamps, locking up, bed. It has been the same since February. It will be the same tomorrow, the same as every day stretching behind you and every day stretching ahead, until you leave, or marry, or rise to a house with 2 servants where at least the sameness is shared. They call you a general servant. General, as in everything, as in the whole of it. The clock on the kitchen dresser says 10 to 7. It's an old drop-dial clock that runs 4 minutes fast, and it is kept 4 minutes fast on purpose by order of Mr. Ashworth, who has missed the 8:13 to Holborn Viaduct twice in 11 years, and speaks of both occasions the way other men speak of railway accidents. The whole house steers by a clock that lies, and everyone knows it lies, and it works. You have thought privately that there is a sermon in that somewhere, better than most of the ones you get on Sunday evenings. 10 to 7, which is truly 14 to 7. The step, then. The front doorstep is scrubbed and then whited with a block of hearthstone, on your knees on a folded sack with the whole street watching, or worse, pretending not to. Next door at number 11, Ada is already out on hers, breathing steam, and you work in silent parallel. 2 girls kneeling on one long terrace, and down the street 2 more, and 2 more beyond that. The whole road, edged in, kneeling girls like a hem being stitched. Ada catches your eye and crosses hers at you, and you bite your cheek so as not to laugh, because laughing on the front step is somehow, in a way nobody could write down but everybody understands, a sacking offence. The step must be white. The step is the house's face. Mrs. Prout says you can read a street's whole fortune in its steps, which houses are rising, which are slipping, which mistress has given up. Number 23 has given up, Mrs. Prout says. You can see it coming in the grey of the stone, and there'll be a removal van inside the year. You look at your own finished step, white as a laid-out shirt front, and you feel, ridiculous as it is, kneeling with wet knees and a raw thumb at 14 minutes to 7, something dangerously close to pride. Then the smell of frying bacon fetches you back through the hall like a hand on your collar. Breakfast. The family is coming down. The dining room is the front room's plainer brother, at the back of the house on the ground floor, looking down the garden at the privy and the lilac bush that is just now coming into leaf. 14 feet by 12. A mahogany table that seats 6 and is polished with beeswax and turpentine until it holds the window in it like still water. A sideboard with a mirror back carrying the cruet, the biscuit barrel, and the spirit stand that is almost never touched, because Mr. Ashworth drinks 1 glass of whisky on Christmas Eve and 1 when the insurance figures balance at the year's end, and considers this an eloquent sufficiency. Over the mantel, a steel engraving of the monarch of the glen. On the mantel itself, a black marble clock like a little tomb, which loses time and which you're not allowed to touch. Winding the clocks is Mr. Ashworth's own office, performed Sunday nights with the gravity of a small coronation. By 7:30 you have this room breathing. Blinds up, sash dropped an inch to change the air. Yesterday's crumbs swept from the turkey carpet with damp tea leaves scattered first to lay the dust. Grate cleaned, fire lit, fender and fire irons rubbed bright. The tea leaves are yesterday's, dried on a tin plate on the range. Everything in this house has 2 lives, and it is part of your work to arrange the resurrection. Then the table, white cloth laid to a geometry as fixed as church, willow-pattern breakfast china, the everyday set, not to be confused, ever, under any circumstances, with what lives in the china closet in the parlour, of which more later, and if you notice something in the way that's said, you're right to. Toast in the toast rack, standing in its slot so it goes leathery instead of soft, which is how the English middle classes have decided toast must be, and nobody remembers deciding. Bacon and eggs under a cover, marmalade. And the teapot to Mrs. Ashworth's right hand, because the mistress pours. Always the mistress pours. Tea is money, and money is poured by the person who answers for it. At 8 o'clock exactly, by the lying kitchen clock and the truthful hall one, they come down. Mr. Herbert Ashworth is 47, a senior clerk at an insurance office in Cheapside, at the same counting desk in the same office for 23 years. He wears a frock coat going green at the seams in a light you never see it in, a collar starched by you, cuffs starched by you, boots blacked by you before you touch the range, and a watch chain across his waistcoat carrying a watch he consults at the table, although the clock is directly in front of him. He is not unkind. He has said good morning, Ellen, to you every morning for 8 weeks, and means it. He is a man being quietly ground between 2 millstones called appearances and arithmetic, and you know it better than anyone in the house except him, because you clean his study desk and you have seen, without ever once being so foolish as to read it openly, the notebook where he does his sums. £280 a year. That's the figure. You know it the way servants know everything sideways. £280, which is riches against your 12, and out of it comes £34 rent for this house, and the rates, and Beatrice's school at 9 guineas a year, and his season ticket, and your wages, and Mrs. Prout's half-crowns, and coals, and gas, and the butcher, the baker, the grocer, the milkman, the bootmaker, the doctor when he must be had, and the life insurance. Always the life insurance. A clerk of all men insures, and above and beneath and around it all, the keeping up, the clean step, the parlour nobody sits in, the black dress that opens the door. And since March, mark this, since the Chancellor's War budget of March 1900, the income tax stands at £1 in the pound, a full shilling, up from 8p, to pay for the war in South Africa. And you heard Mr. Ashworth read that out of the paper to his wife in a voice men usually keep for deaths in the family. £14 a year. That shilling costs him more than he pays you. The war has its hand in this house's pocket, and its other hand is holding something dearer, and everyone at that table knows it, and nobody says it at breakfast. Because the war is not columns of figures in this house. The war is Arthur. Master Arthur Ashworth, age 20, second best bedroom, dusted twice a week. Junior clerk in his father's own office, steady, cheerful, mad on his bicycle and on cricket at the Oval. And in the first week of January 1900, when the war was going wrong and London was raising its own regiment of volunteer clerks and shopmen, the City Imperial Volunteers, Arthur went with 3 fellows from the office and put his name down, 20 years old. His mother didn't speak at meals for 2 days, Ada told you, and Ada had it from the girl you replaced. On the 13th of January he sailed, and the whole city turned out roaring to see the CIV go, and Mr. Ashworth went to the office an hour early that day so as not to be seen watching the ship. Now there's a cabinet photograph of him on the parlour mantel, a boy in a slouch hat trying to look stern, and there are letters, thin blue letters with field post office marks that take 6 weeks to come, and you have learned the sound the letterbox makes when one of them lands on the hall tiles. It's the same rattle as a tradesman's circular. It's not the same house afterwards either way. Mrs. Louisa Ashworth is 44, and she is the government of your world. Grey-eyed, straight-backed, keeper of the keys, and the keys are real, a bunch at her waist. Tea caddy, store cupboard, sideboard cellarette, linen press. She was a draper's daughter from Croydon, which you're not supposed to know and will not repeat, and she runs this house on £3 a week, housekeeping the way a captain runs a ship through rocks, and every Friday night she and the account book sit together under the dining room gas and fight it out. To you she is exact, cool, watchful and fair in the way a yard measure is fair. In 8 weeks she has praised you twice. You remember both, word for word. That's the shameful truth of service. The thing you'd never write home? You came for wages. You find yourself working for 2 sentences a month. Miss Beatrice is 12. At Miss Colville's school for girls up the hill, all pinafores and scales on the parlour piano and sudden storms of self-importance. She treats you sometimes as a friend, sometimes as furniture, switching between the two in a single sentence, and hasn't the smallest idea she's doing it. And that, Ada says, is the middle classes in one girl. To be fair to Beatrice, she is also the only person in the house who says thank you as if she can see you, and the only one who asks questions, and some of them land in you like splinters. Ellen, doesn't your arm ache carrying that? Yes, miss, it does. Breakfast is bacon at 8p a pound. Eggs at £1 the dozen this month. Bread at 5p, farthing the quartern loaf and creeping up since the war began. And you know every one of those prices because you fetch and carry against them, and Mrs. Ashworth checks the books of every tradesman to the farthing. Listen to the arithmetic of one ordinary breakfast. Half a pound of bacon, 4p. 4 eggs, 4p. Bread, butter, marmalade, tea, milk, gas under the kettle before the range was hot. Call it £1 the lot near enough. £1 every morning, 7 shillings a week, £18 a year, and that's breakfast alone, the smallest meal, in one small house. And now you know why Mrs. Ashworth's account book has a spine like a hymnal, and why the leaves in your teapot get 2 lives. The line between this family and a slide down into the terraces by the railway is perhaps £30 a year wide. Everyone in this room is holding a rope, and nobody's allowed to look as if they're holding it. You serve from the left, silent in your print dress with a clean apron over it, and you hear the day given its orders. Mr. Ashworth will catch the 8:13. Beatrice has a music lesson. Mrs. Ashworth is at home this afternoon, which means the parlour, which means you, and Tuesday is her day. The 1st and 3rd Tuesdays of the month, printed on her calling cards, and ladies will come between 3 and 5, and there must be thin bread and butter and seed cake, and you must be in the black dress with the good apron by 2. And Ellen, Mrs. Ashworth, without looking up, the step was well done this morning. 3, that's 3 times now. That's at 13 minutes past 8. Mr. Ashworth is gone to the station in a moving smell of bay rum and boot blacking. One of 8 men in identical hats, leaving 8 identical houses in this road, inside the same 2 minutes. A tide of black coats drawn down the hill to the trains, and clerks pour into the city like this from every suburb on every line. Hundreds of thousands of them. The whole machine of London breathing in. It will breathe them all back out at 6. Beatrice goes at 9:15, satchel banging, and then the front door closes and the house exhales and it is yours, which is to say, its work is yours. Upstairs the beds are waiting and the slops. But before you go up, you stand one moment in the empty dining room, in the smell of bacon fat and beeswax and coal smoke, listening to the little tomb of a clock lose its 4 seconds, and you take the room in. the way you're learning to. Every house is a story told in rooms, Mrs. Prout says, and a servant is the only one who reads every page. You've read this page now. Come upstairs. It gets harder before it gets easier. The staircase is the spine of the house, and you will climb it on an ordinary day, somewhere between 30 and 40 times. You counted once, with a stub of pencil on the whitewash inside the coal shed door, a mark per climb, because Ada bet you a halfpenny it was over 25. 38, Ada paid up. 13 stairs to the half landing, then 5 more, then the attic flight. Call it 1,000 stairs a day, carrying on the various journeys coal scuttles, water cans, slop pails, trays, linen, lamps, and once, memorably, a whole bedstead headboard, downhill alone, while Mrs. Ashworth called guidance from below like a pilot bringing in a ship. The carpet runner is held by brass stair rods, and every one of those rods comes out on Fridays to be polished. 13 of them plus 5, and each one has a small burr at the left end that catches the cloth, except the 9th, which is a replacement and smooth. And this is the kind of thing you know now. You could be blindfolded and set on any step of this house, and you'd tell it from the feel of the rod and the sound of the tread. 8 weeks. Imagine what you'll know by the year's end. The master bedroom first, always. And the rule of the master bedroom is that you go in when it's empty, and you leave it as if nobody had ever slept, dressed, coughed, dropped hairpins, or lived in it at all. Strip the bed to air, shake the feather bolster out the window if the morning's dry, turn the mattress ends Tuesdays and sides Fridays. The bed is brass, and the counterpane is white honeycomb, and heaven witness the state of you if a smut off your own apron lands on it. On the washstand, the flowered basin and ewer, his shaving mug with its cold soap scum ring, her toothglass, and the slop pail beneath, into which the basin water goes, and then the pail goes down the stairs in your right hand with a can of fresh water balanced in your left. And this, twice daily, is called doing the slops, and no one has ever put it on a Christmas card about the good old days. And when I say slops, I need you to understand what that means in a house in 1900, even a good house, even a house with a water closet. It means every drop of washing water carried up clean and carried down dirty. It means chamber pots, china ones with roses on, under every bed, emptied by you, scalded by you, because nobody is walking down 2 flights to the water closet on a February night, and the WC itself, that proud varnished throne with its chain and its cistern named Niagara, scrubbed by you with soda and a rag kept on a nail behind the door and used for nothing else on this earth. Your mother asked in her letter whether London houses smelled grand. You wrote back that the hall smelled of ferns and furniture polish, which was true, and you did not write with what labour that hall was kept smelling of ferns and furniture polish, while 6 people's slops went down the back of it morning and evening, in cans, in your hands, past the green baize door. The bathroom is the house's pride and your private enemy. A real bathroom, a fitted bath with taps, in a house at £34 a year, is something to mention casually to relatives, and Mrs. Ashworth mentions it as casually as a medal. Over the bath crouches the geyser, a copper cylinder on iron legs with a pilot ring, and a temper which heats water by gas, in theory instantly, in practice with a preliminary silence and then a whump of catching flame that has sent you backwards onto the linoleum twice. You light it Saturdays for the family's baths, standing sideways like a man firing a cannon, and Mrs. Prout has told you with relish of a geezer in Peckham that took a girl's eyebrows in the bathroom window with it. Gas, Ellen, says Mrs. Prout. is a good servant and a bad master, same as us. Respect it and count your matches. You do respect it. You'll have cause to respect it more before this year is out, but that's for a winter night, and it isn't the geyser that will give you the fright, and it isn't in this room. Leave it. You'll know it when you smell it. Beatrice's room is small and pink and strewn, every single morning, as if a wind had passed through a haberdasher's, and you pick up ribbons and stockings and yesterday's pinafore, and make the bed. And once a week you turn out under it and find the strata of a 12-year-old civilization, pencil shavings, a dried orange, a library novel folded open at a kissing scene, which you put back exactly as found, spine up, page for page. She trusts the room to keep her secrets. The room tells them all to you. You keep them better than the room does. Arthur's room you do twice a week, Tuesdays and Saturdays, and it is the strangest work in the house, because it is housework for a ghost who is alive. Bed made up fresh, though nobody rumples it. Cricket bat oiled in the corner. His bicycle, a Rudge Whitworth he paid £11 for out of 2 years' saving, stands against the wall with its tyres gone soft, and Mrs. Ashworth has asked you to dust it, mind, not move it, because he was particular where it stood. On the chest of drawers, a fixture card for the Surrey season he's missing. You open the window a crack, and the room fills with the ordinary noise of the road, and you shut it again, and the room goes back to being a held breath. On the wall there's a map of South Africa cut from the Daily Mail, and it was Mrs. Ashworth who pinned it there, in this room rather than downstairs where visitors might see it and commence sympathising, and there are pins in it, moved after each letter 6 weeks behind the truth. That's the thing you try not to think about doing this room. Whatever is happening to Arthur has already happened. The letters are light from a dead star or a live one. You dust the frame, you move on, and then, on your own account before the attic flight, you allow yourself the 30 seconds you allow yourself. Up in your own room, kneeling at the bedstead, you work 2 fingers into the unstitched seam at the head of your mattress ticking, and you touch, without taking it out, a small stiff book. Post Office Savings Bank on the cover. Inside, in a clerk's copper plate, deposits. February 1 shilling. March 2 shillings. April 2 shillings. 5 shillings stand to the credit of Ellen Draper, aged 15, in the Bank of the Queen herself, and nobody in this house or any house knows it exists except you and the post office. Your wage is £3 every quarter day, and most of it goes home to Paddock Wood by postal order, because your father's back is bad and your brothers are 11 and 9. But the shillings in the seam are yours. The plan is 2 whole pounds by next spring, and then, depending which dream has the upper hand that week, either a proper wool winter coat with a velvet collar, bought new, fitting, yours, or the fair home at Whitsun, with presents for everyone and change. Some nights the coat wins, some nights the fair. The book stays in the seam. You have never once told anyone. A girl in service learns quickly that anything of yours the house knows about, the house somehow ends up owning. 1/2 and 2 on the range damper when you're back down because the fire's sulked low, and the mid-morning is tradesman. The house has 2 mouths, and the back door is the true one. Milk came at 7, the second delivery comes at 3. The baker's man leaves the quartern loaves Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and late morning brings Sidney Meggs, the butcher's boy, 14 years old, on a black delivery bicycle with a basket the size of a dog kennel, and a whistle you can hear 2 streets off, always the same tune, Soldiers of the Queen, pitched high and murdered slowly. "Morning, Ellen." He says your name like you're both grown, which neither of you is. Leg of mutton and the mistress's kidneys. Any news of your master, Arthur? Letter last week. He's well. Marching mostly, he says. Marching. Sidney leans on the doorframe, bloody parcel in hand, and delivers the considered military opinion of the Walworth Road. I'd have gone, you know, if I was older. I tried at the recruiting office in January, said I was 18. He's 4'11". Sergeant laughed till he had to sit down. He never even said no, just laughed. He hands the parcel over, and under the brown paper the meat is cold and dense and gives against your fingers, and the smell of it is iron and sawdust. 6pence halfpenny a pound, that mutton, up a farthing since March, and you'll hear about the farthing on Friday when the book is checked. You'll be old enough soon enough, you say, because he's looking down the garden at nothing. War'll be over by then, everyone says. He swings his leg over the bicycle, wobbles, rights himself, whistles himself away. You stand a moment with the cold meat in your hands. Over by then. Everyone does say it. They said it last autumn too, Ada tells you, before Black Week, when the war stopped being a story in other people's newspapers. Inside, the mutton goes into the meat safe in the larder, a cupboard faced with zinc gauze to keep flies from meat in the days before anyone on this street has seen a refrigerator, and the larder is the coldest room in the house. Stone-shelved, north-walled, smelling of cheese and sweet and the vinegar crock. And in July you will come to stand in it, briefly, for reasons that have nothing to do with food. Then it's peeling potatoes into a bucket, and the midday dinner, because the family's main meal is at 1 o'clock, mutton roasted and then eked out in its own gravy for days after, and by 2:30 you've eaten your own dinner standing at the dresser, washed every plate, scoured the roasting tin with sand, changed into the black dress and the good apron, scrubbed your nails with the little brush kept for exactly this, and pinned the afternoon cap over your hair, because it's Tuesday, the first Tuesday, and the parlour is waiting, and the parlour is another country. The parlour is the front room, and the front room is the shrine. 15 feet by 13, bay window to the street, lace curtains, then heavier curtains, then a paper blind, 3 veils between the family and the world, so that light enters this room the way it enters a church, filtered, coloured, and on its best behaviour. It is the best room, and being the best room, it is used perhaps 6 hours a week. The rest of the time it sits in dim brown state, dusted daily by you, inhabited by nobody, a room kept the way an army keeps a flag. Ada's mistress next door keeps hers the same. Every house in this road and every road like it from Wandsworth to Walthamstow maintains one whole room, 1/7 of the rent, 1/7 of the coal, as a standing proof that the family could receive the vicar at any moment without shame. You come from a cottage where every room worked for its living. It took you weeks to stop finding the parlour eerie. You're not sure you have stopped. Take the inventory, because you dust every piece of it daily and could recite it like a psalm. The piano, walnut, on casters. Beatrice's scales rising through the floor into your attic on practice evenings. The over-mantel mirror in a gilt frame that shows you a dim green version of yourself you have learned not to look at. The aspidistra in its china pot on a bamboo stand. The one plant on earth that can live in this light, wiped leaf by leaf with the damp cloth Fridays. The fire screen embroidered by Mrs. Ashworth's own mother. Antimacassars on the chair backs, starched by you, so that no gentleman's hair oil shall ever touch plush. A whatnot in the corner bearing shells from Margate, a china pug, and a photograph of the Queen at her diamond jubilee, 3 years old now, the little black-bonneted shape in her carriage outside St. Paul's. Arthur's photograph on the mantel, slouch hat, trying for stern, and in the alcove by the chimney breast, the china closet, glass-fronted, locked, and inside it, throned on the middle shelf, the Rockingham tea service. The Rockingham came to Mrs. Ashworth from her grandmother. Cream and gilt with a band of rose pink, 12 of everything, and a teapot with a lid whose knob is a tiny gilded crown. It is brought out 4 times a year, perhaps 5. It is washed only by Mrs. Ashworth's own hands in a wooden bowl, never in the stone sink. You have been told its history twice, both times with the closet key already back in the bunch, and the moral of the history both times was the same. This is the thing in this house that cannot be replaced. Remember that teapot. You will have cause. And one more item of inventory, though it seems nothing today. On the wall, either side of the mantel, the gas brackets, iron stems curving out like question marks, each ending in a globe of etched glass. The parlour is the only room with 2. When lit, they sing, a thin, steady hiss, and the left-hand one, the one nearer the window, has lately taken to whispering even when it's off. You noticed it first a fortnight ago, dusting, a faint breath of that smell, the gas smell, sourish, heavy, a smell like a headache before you have one. You reported it. Mr. Ashworth came, sniffed, tried the tap, pronounced its sound, and observed that girls from the country often find the smell of town conveniences strange at first. You said, "Yes, sir." The bracket went on whispering. "You've taken to checking the tap with your thumb every evening, last thing, on your own authority. Nobody knows you do it. Add it to the list of things this house doesn't know it depends on. At 3 o'clock the ladies come. You answer the door in black dress, good apron, afternoon cap, and you say, 'Good afternoon, ma'am. Mrs. Ashworth is at home,' which is the formula, and you take cards from gloved fingers and lay them on the hall salver, and you show them in, and then you carry up the tea. Not the Rockingham today, only the second best service, but the ceremony is full dress. The spirit kettle, the thin bread and butter cut so fine you can read the willow pattern through it, the seed cake, the sugar tongs. 5 ladies, upright on the edges of chairs built for leaning back, conversation moving like a slow, polite tennis over the net of the tea table. The war, of course. Everyone has a nephew or a neighbour's son out there. Mrs. Fenn from number 4 has a son-in-law with the yeomanry. And prices, my dear, coal gone quite wicked, and sugar sure to follow if the Chancellor has his way. You stand, you hand, you refill, you're thanked without being seen, and you hear everything. A parlour maid is a piece of furniture that remembers, and it's here at 4:10 on the first Tuesday of May, 1900, with the room at its fullest and politest, that your year turns its first corner. You are lifting the second best teapot from the tray at the side table, one hand on the handle, one steadying the lid the way you were taught, when Mrs. Fenn's voice rises suddenly with news of her son-in-law. Order to the front, my dear, the actual front, and every head turns and yours turns with them, and the lid you were steadying slides. You feel it go. Time does that thing it does, goes wide and slow, and the lid turns over once in the air like a diving bird and strikes the side table's marble top with a sound no louder than a teaspoon falling. Nobody hears it. That's the mercy and the horror of it. 5 ladies are exclaiming over Mrs. Fenn. You look down. The lid lies on the marble, and from its rim a chip the size of a little fingernail has jumped, and a hairline runs from the notch toward the centre, fine as a hair from your own head. Second best, not the Rockingham, thank God. Thank God, but broken is broken, and broken in this house is a crime with the ledger. Breakages are stopped from wages. Ada lost 4 shillings once to a sugar basin. But it isn't the shillings that have turned your stomach to cold water. It's the account book of trust. 8 weeks, 3 praisings, careful, careful, careful. And now this, in the parlour, at the at-home. What you do next, you do without deciding. You palm the chip, you set the lid back on the pot with the notch turned to the handle, where no eye falls, you pour, your hand, you smile at nothing, and the tea goes round, and the ladies leave at 5 with a rustle like starlings, and nobody in the world knows except you and the teapot. That night, after locking up, you sit at the kitchen table under the small gas jet with the lid, the chip, and a twist of flour and white lead paste mixed the way your grandmother mended her Sunday china in paddock wood. You set the chip like a jeweller, wipe the seam, and by candlelight even you can barely find the line. It goes back into the second best cupboard with the notch to the wall. Tomorrow you'll confess, you tell yourself. Tomorrow becomes Thursday. Thursday becomes a month. The mend holds. The lie holds, and it is a lie. The first real one of your service, small and white and glued with lead. Sitting in the dark of the china cupboard, waiting, the way secrets in houses wait. You'll meet it again in October. Leave it there till then. You have a summer to get through first, and the summer of 1900 announces itself before May is even out, with a night unlike any night this street has ever spent. Friday, the 18th of May. You're carrying the supper things down at 9:30 when you hear it start far off to the north, a sound like the sea in a shell swelling. Then maroons banging over toward Camberwell and church bells, and the next street singing, and then this street, doors opening all down the terrace, the whole road filling in dressing gowns and shirt sleeves, and Mr. Ashworth on the front step in his slippers with the evening paper in his hand, and the news is Mafeking, the little town in South Africa, besieged since October, 217 days, the town whose name every person in this country down to Sydney Meggs has carried like a stone in the shoe, is relieved. Baden-Powell's garrison is safe. London has gone off like a firework factory. Up in town, though you'll only read of it, the crowds are so thick round the mansion house that omnibuses stand stranded like ships at low tide. Strangers embrace strangers, and the roar can be heard, they say, from Hampstead to the river. They will invent a word from that night to Mafek, meaning to rejoice past all decorum, and the word is minted in the very streets Mr. Ashworth's train runs through. Milton Road Mafeks in its own suburban key. Somebody's brother fetches a cornet. The Fens hang a Union Jack out of a bedroom window. Beatrice is allowed downstairs in her nightgown, and dances on the step with Ada from next door, and Ada's mistress and Mrs. Ashworth, who exchange perhaps 40 words a year across the wall, stand talking like sisters for half an hour. You stand in the doorway behind the family, which is your place, in the smell of the fern and the umbrellas, and you watch Mrs. Ashworth in the gaslight. She is smiling and clapping with the rest, and her eyes are wet and fixed on something that is not in this street, and you know as if her skull were glass what she's holding. Arthur is not at Mafeking, was never at Mafeking, and a war that can make a whole city weep for joy over one small town is a war that has been squeezing her for 7 months without once letting go. Relief, you learn that night watching her, is a thing that can land on a person like a blow. It's past midnight when the road quiets. You bank the range last thing, damper to 2:30, and climb to your attic through a house that smells faintly, unprecedentedly, of other people's tobacco in the outdoors. Some things you know already, at 15, 8 stairs from your bed, that you will remember this night your whole life, that the war is not over, whatever the cornet thinks, and that the strangest part of your position is exactly this: to stand in the doorway of other people's joy, holding it, dusting it, carrying its teacups, belonging to it the way the aspidistra belongs to it, warm enough, tired enough, close enough. That's the wage nobody writes down. You sleep, the house breathes, the lid in the china cupboard keeps its secret, and the gas bracket by the parlour window whispers to the dark, and far to the south, under different stars, Arthur Ashworth is marching toward a spring that is called autumn there, 6 weeks ahead of his own letters. Monday is washing day, and washing day is war. It begins Sunday night, when you fill the copper in the scullery, 20 gallons bucket by bucket from the one cold tap, and lay the fire under it ready. It begins in earnest at 6:30 Monday morning, when Mrs. Prout arrives at the back door, shawled, steaming, smelling of carbolic and strong tea, with her sleeves already rolled. Mrs. Prout is 55, a widow off Cold Harbour Lane, and she chars for 3 houses in this road, Mondays here, and takes in shirts besides, and has buried a husband and 2 children, and says of it only that the Lord and the ringer both squeeze, but the ringer tells you when. Her forearms are the forearms of a blacksmith. Her hands are past hurting, she says, boiled past feeling like a Sunday pudding, and she can wring a sheet in 2 twists that you can't wring in 6. She calls you Nelly, which nobody else has ever called you, and you would, though you'd never say it, do more for one nod from Mrs. Prout than for most of the praise in the parlour. The work is this: sort, in the scullery, whites, from coloureds from flannels, the family's linen in one world, your own poor things in another, washed last, soak, soap, then into the copper, boiling, prodded with a copper stick bleached white as bone, the scullery filling with steam till the window runs and your cap wilts and the walls weep. Then the dolly tub, then the rubbing board, knuckles in soda water 2 hours, 3. The soda finding the crack by your left thumb with the accuracy of a wasp, then bluing in the rinse, Reckitt's blue in its little flannel bag, to trick white linen whiter. Then the ringer bolted to the sink edge, you feeding, Mrs. Prout turning, sheets coming through the rollers flat and hard as boards. Then the garden lines, and pray it doesn't rain, and it rains, and everything comes in again and hangs on the clothes horse round the range and on the pouliera overhead. And for 2 days the whole ground floor lives inside a fog of damp linen, and Mr. Ashworth eats his supper Monday nights under a ceiling of his own drying shirts, and pretends, in the manner of his class and kind, that he cannot see them. Dinner on washing day is cold mutton left from Sunday, no cooking on Monday, the range has other employment, and you and Mrs. Prout eat yours together at the kitchen table at noon, which is the one sit-down meal of your week in company, and worth more to you than the mutton. She talks. You bank it like coal. It was Mrs. Prout who taught you the damper 1/2. It's Mrs. Prout who teaches you over the cold mutton the deeper trades of the work, that a mistress forgives a breakage sooner than a concealment, though the wage book says otherwise, and you eat that one in silence, thinking of a teapot lid. And it's Mrs. Prout, this Monday in June, who stops with her fork halfway and looks at you through the steam and gives you the sentence you'll still own when you're old. You're quick, Nelly, and you're careful, and them's your wages in this life more than the pounds is. But hear me. She points the fork. Don't let a house eat you. You feed it, you black it, you shine it, and it'll take all that and your knees and your hands and your Sundays and never once know your name. Serve the house. Don't be the house. She goes back to her mutton. Finish them flannels. Serve the house. Don't be the house. You will find, over this year, that the sentence works loose in you at odd hours, like the ninth stair rod. June brings small wonders. Mr. Ashworth comes home one evening lit up like a boy, having ridden the new Central London Railway, the twopenny tube, open that very week under Oxford Street, electric trains in an iron pipe deep under the shops, any distance for twopence, and he describes it at supper twice through, the white-tiled stations, the lifts, the strange dead air, and Beatrice begs to be taken, and even Mrs. Ashworth permits herself to be astonished. The 20th century is coming up the line, 6 months early, smelling of ozone and clean electricity, and this house sits fast in the 19th, running on coal and paraffin and gas and girl. And coal, this year of all years, is the sum that will not come right. Understand the cellar because you serve it. Under the front steps, reach from the area, a black vault that holds 3 tons, filled through the round iron plate in the pavement, the coal hole that every London child knows to jump on for the clang. The coalman's cart comes with sacks, 200 weight each, carried on bent backs, shot roaring down the hole in a black cataract, while you stand by with sacking laid to save the step you whitened. In January, the best kitchen coal stood near £1 a ton. By this summer, with the war-eating steam coal by the shipload and half Europe bidding against the gasworks, London is calling it a coal famine, and the price stands at 28 and 30 shillings, and men in the city are saying 35 by Christmas. Mrs. Ashworth has cut the order from 3 tons to 2.5, and the Friday account book sits open longer than it did, and you have new standing orders, recited once, expected forever. Cinders sifted twice now, banked fires slacked with damped small coal and potato peelings, the dining room fire not lit before 4 from May to September, and the parlour fire, visitors accepted, not at all. You are the engineer of these economies. Nobody calls you an engineer. The house must stay warm-looking, mind. The brass must shine. The smoke must rise from the chimney at the hours the street expects smoke. Thrift, like work, must be invisible. Poverty is failing to keep up appearances. Economy is keeping them up cheaper, and the whole street is at it. Every kitchen down this terrace running its own quiet war ministry. Then July comes in, and the sky turns to brass. The papers begin printing the deaths from heat, and there are many, and they are mostly in the close streets north of the river, but the suburbs cook too. This house, built to hold heat like a virtue, holds it like a grudge, and the range cannot stop. That's the sentence of a heatwave in 1900. 90 degrees in the shade of the garden, and the family must still eat. The kettle must still boil. The flat irons must still heat for Tuesday's ironing. And so from 6 in the morning the kitchen stands at 100 and something no one has ever measured, and you work in it. Sleeves to the elbow, which is as far as decency goes. Your cap soak through by 8, your ears ringing by noon. You scorch your forearm on the oven shelf, the old scar's cousin, and hold it against the cool of the lead pipe under the scullery tap until the throb goes down. Butter runs to oil in the larder, milk turns by afternoon delivery, meat is bought by the day and cooked the hour it comes, and twice mid-afternoon, with the house empty and the blinds down against the sun, and the whole street stunned silent, you step into the larder, the stone-shelved, north-walled larder, coldest room in the house, and you stand, 30 seconds, 40, your wrists pressed flat to the slate shelf, your eyes shut, stealing cold like a housebreaker. Then back to the range. If ever anyone tells you the old summers were gentler, ask them who was standing next to the fire. It's in that white week of heat that Mrs. Ashworth sends you up the hill with a note for Miss Colville's school, Beatrice's term fees being a matter for sealed envelopes and not for postcards, and coming back you take, without exactly deciding to, the long way, up to where Herne Hill becomes Denmark Hill, and the road lifts its chin, and there it is, the thing Ada told you to look for your first week, and you've never yet had the daylight spare. London, laid out below you like a dropped grey eiderdown, smoking from 100,000 chimneys even in July, spires standing up out of the haze like masts, and away north, small and pale and impossible, the dome of St. Paul's, riding the smoke the way it has ridden it for 200 years. And behind you when you turn, south and east on its own hill, the Crystal Palace, the great glassy arc itself, all that remains of the wonder year of 1851, a mile and a half of glazing flashing heliograph messages at the sun. Between those two shining things, the dome and the glass, lie 5 or 6 miles, and in that gap live more human beings than in the whole of some countries, 6.5 million before this decade is out, the largest city the world has ever once contained, and every roof of it you think standing there with your empty envelope basket, every single roof down there has under it a range, and beside every range a girl or a wife or a worn mother, feeding it, blacking it, boiling on it, and not one of them visible from here. The city looks like it runs on smoke. You know now what the smoke runs on. You're barely a cog in it. A 1/4-inch cog in the smallest wheel of the biggest machine on earth. But you're here. You're in it. You're part of it. Part of the largest thing your family has ever touched. And when you write to your mother on Sunday, you will try to put the view into words and fail, and write instead that London is very large, and the weather continues warm, and that you are well, and that you remain her loving Ellen. Then you walk back down the hill to the house, because the range wants making up by 4, and the view doesn't carry coal. August comes, and with it the letter that changes the temperature of the house for a month. You know its arrival by the sound, that flat tradesman's rattle on the hall tiles, that is nothing like what it carries, and you have it on the salver and up to Mrs. Ashworth before the echo's done. She reads it standing in the dining-room window, one hand rising slowly to the brooch at her throat, and then she does something she has never once done in your 7 months. She reads it aloud to you. Arthur has been in a fight, a real one, back in the last week of May, at a place called Doornkop, a line of low ridges west of Johannesburg, and the CIV, the clerks and shopmen and junior partners of the City of London, went up a bare slope under fire and took it, and men fell doing it, and Arthur's letter spends 1 sentence on all of that, and 4 sentences on the state of his boots. He is well. He was in Pretoria in June when Lord Roberts rode in, the 5th of June, and saw the flag go up over the enemy's own capital, and everyone, he writes, says it's the end now, near enough, all over bar the shouting. Everyone says, "Where has your year heard that before?" But the letter is fat because folded inside it is a second thing, and the second thing is why Mrs. Ashworth's hand is at her throat. It's a note in Arthur's quick clerk's hand, wrapping something he could not send but sends word of, his chocolate. In the new year, every soldier serving in South Africa was sent a gift from the Queen herself, a small flat tin, red and gold and blue, her head embossed on the lid, Victoria Regina, South Africa 1900, and half a pound of chocolate inside. 50,000 tins and more went out. Some men ate theirs in a sitting. Some sold them to collectors on the spot. There were offers of £5 and more for an unopened one, a private soldier's 3 months' pay. Some sent them home like relics. Arthur has kept his, unopened, in the bottom of his kit through 1,100 miles of marching. Because, the note says, it seemed a thing Mother ought to have, and I mean to carry it home myself and put it in her hand, and mind nobody eats it before I do. The tin is not even in the house, and already it has a place laid for it. Mrs. Ashworth reads that note twice, and folds it along Arthur's own folds, and says, in a voice she has to manage, "He'll put it on the parlour mantel himself then." And from that day the space to the left of Arthur's photograph stands vacated, dusted daily by you around a tin that is 6,000 miles away, the emptiest 6 square inches in South London. Remember the tin. It is coming home slowly, and it will sit in that spot longer than anyone in this house tonight could bear to be told, and the day it is finally opened, none of the people in this story will be the same people. Leave it marching north with Arthur. Autumn's at the door. September brings your birthday. The 9th, a Sunday, as it falls, 16 years old. You tell nobody, because a servant's birthday is not a thing the house observes, but Mrs. Prout, who misses nothing, has it out of you by asking dates until you blush, and the following Monday there is a bun with your cold mutton, a penny bun with pink icing gone slightly to glue in her pocket on the way, and it is, you write your mother truthfully, the best thing you have eaten in London. 16. Your wage will be reviewed at Christmas quarter. Mrs. Ashworth has let fall. Reviews being conducted in this house with the solemnity of Parliament. 16. And your savings book in the mattress seam says 14 shillings now. One deposit missed in July when your father's back went bad again, and the postal order home was bigger. The coat with the velvet collar and the Whitsun fair have stopped taking turns in your head. Lately it's mostly the coat. You saw one in a draper's window in Brixton on your evening out. Dark green wool, collar like a cat's back, £1 8 and 6. You stood in front of that window so long a shop walker came out. You didn't go in. Not yet. That book has to say £2 first. That's the rule you made, and a rule you make yourself is the only kind nobody can sack you from. Ada, meanwhile, is in love, and over the garden wall on peg-out mornings you get it in instalments, like a cereal. He's the milkman's son, Walter, 20, walking out with her official since August bank holiday, when he took her to the Crystal Palace to hear the bands and paid for everything and never once was forward. Nellie, well, once, and her mistress permits followers at the back gate Thursday evenings. 10 minutes, gate ajar, which is liberal. Some houses permit nothing and the courting happens anyway. In coal sheds, in chapel porches, in the gaps of the timetable, because a maid's heart runs on stolen time like everything else about her. Ada at 17 has a plan laid out like washing. 2 more years' service save the wages, marry Walter when he gets the second round, and never black another woman's grate as long as she lives. My own step I'll do singing, Nelly, but my own. You lean on your side of the wall, pegs in your apron pocket, and you look at your own hands on the line, 16 now, cracked at one knuckle, and you think about rules you make yourself and say nothing, and bank it all like coal. The autumn's public noise is an election. Parliament is dissolved in September, and the country votes through the first weeks of October, and they will call it the Khaki Election ever after, because the government has draped itself in the war the way this street draped itself in bunting on Mafeking night. A vote for the opposition is a vote for the Boers. The posters say as much. and Mr. Salisbury's men are home again by 134 seats before the leaves are properly down. Mr. Ashworth walks to the schoolroom polling station on his day like a man attending church. One vote, the householder's vote. There being in this kingdom of 41 million souls some 6.5 million voters, all of them men of property or tenancy, which is to say, not Mrs. Ashworth, who governs £3 a week to the farthing, not Mrs. Prout, who has buried 2 children and boiled the shirts of half Cold Harbour Lane, not Ada, not you, and not Sidney, though give Sidney his due. He is loudly of the government persuasion at every back door in the parish. You black-lead arrange in a country that is voting about the war that has its hand in the house's pocket and its eye on the house's son. And no one under this roof but the man on the 813 has a word to say in it. You don't think of it as unjust exactly, not yet. No one has offered you the word. You think of it the way you think of the weather, later in your life, and not so very much later. Women will chain themselves to railings over this, and you will read of it over somebody's shoulder and feel the 9th stair rod shift, and the war will not lie down and be won. That's the October lesson, arriving between the lines of Mr. Ashworth's paper, which you read now daily and openly, it being somehow established since Doornkop that Ellen may see the paper once the master's done, and there's a kindness in that nobody has mentioned aloud. Pretoria fell in June, the President has fled abroad, the set battles are over, and yet the columns keep marching and the lists keep printing, because the Boers have broken into bands and taken to the veldt, and there are ambushed convoys and cut wires and burned farms, and a new word in the dispatches, commando, and men keep dying of enteric fever in numbers. The headlines don't love to dwell on, more than the bullets take. Tea-coloured water and typhoid doing quietly what the artillery couldn't. Over by Christmas has stopped being said, even by Sidney. But for this house none of that is the news. The news is 4 lines in the paper at the very end of October, and Mrs. Ashworth has it from the paper before the letter can come, and the 4 lines say that the City Imperial Volunteers are ordered home, their work done, and are even now at sea. Arthur is on a ship called the Urania, somewhere off Africa, steaming north at 300 sea miles a day. The house goes strange. There's no other word for it. Mrs. Ashworth commences a spring clean in October, which is against nature, and you turn out Arthur's room to the boards, beat the carpet over the line till your shoulders sing, wash the paint, air the mattress 2 full days, pump his bicycle tyres iron hard by her particular instruction, and the map of South Africa comes down off the wall, rolled, tied, and put at the back of the wardrobe, finished with wrong, as it proves. But who under this roof could know that? And the fixture card of the cricket he missed goes in the drawer. The larder begins to fill against no stated occasion, and you are told on the last Friday of October, in the voice Mrs. Ashworth keeps for the account book, that on the day itself the family will go up to the city to see the regiment march in, and that there will be, that evening, a supper, and that the best china will be used. The best china. You stand there with your yes, ma'am, and inside your chest, small and cold and exact, a teapot lid with a mended chip turns its notch to the wall. The day is Monday, the 29th of October, 1900. The Urania came into Southampton on the Saturday, and this morning the City Imperial Volunteers, near 1,300 of them in their worn khaki, land at Paddington and march across London to be received at St. Paul's, and London, which has been saving itself up since Mafeking, comes apart at the seams. The family leaves at 8. All 3 of them, Beatrice granted the day off school as if school could have held her. Mr. Ashworth in his Sunday coat, Mrs. Ashworth in a bonnet you have never seen, which means it is very old, or very new, and it is very old. They will stand at his office windows in Cheapside, the whole firm's families packed at the glass, and watch the regiment come up from St. Paul's churchyard through a crowd the papers will guess at hundreds of thousands, and the crush in the streets that day will be terrible in places. People taken over the barriers fainting, and worse than fainting. There are deaths in that crowd, and the celebration and the crush and the pride all print together in the next morning's columns. That is what 1,000,000 people wanting to love 1,300 means when it happens between narrow buildings. You have the story that evening in 3 voices at once, Beatrice's soaring over, and one image stays. Mrs. Ashworth could not tell at that distance, down among 10 ranks of identical brown men, which one was hers, and waved the whole march long anyway to all of them, on the chance. You spend that day alone in the house, and you and the house make ready. The supper is Wednesday, aunts and uncles and 2 men from the office invited, and Monday and Tuesday you cook and clean to a standard you didn't know you'd reached. And Tuesday afternoon comes the moment you've been walking around all autumn, the way you walk around the loose slate. Mrs. Ashworth unlocks the china closet and takes stock for Wednesday, service by service, her own hands, every piece to the light. The Rockingham first, counted, perfect. Then the second best, which will pour the actual tea of the evening while the Rockingham rains, and you are at the sideboard not 3 feet away, folding napkins with fingers that have stopped being yours, when she lifts the teapot lid and turns it, and stops. The light from the window crosses the mended chip. You watch her thumb find the hairline, cross it, come back. The clock on the mantel loses its 4 seconds very loudly. She does not say anything for as long as it takes you to fold one napkin wrong 3 times, and then she says, without turning, in a voice with nothing in it at all, when. And here is the thing you did not plan, could not have planned, standing all those weeks between the lie and the ledger. The truth comes out of you like water out of a knocked-over can, all of it at once. The first Tuesday of May, the at home, Mrs. Fenn's son-in-law and every head turning and the lid going over in the air, the chip in your palm through 2 hours of pouring, the flour and white lead by candlelight, your grandmother's receipt, the notch turned to the wall, tomorrow becoming Thursday, becoming a month, becoming this. You even tell her the part you'd least rehearsed, which is why. Not the 4 shillings, though you were afraid for the 4 shillings, but the account book with no figures in it, the one where careful stood after your name 3 times, and you couldn't, you say. You couldn't bear to be moved to the other page, and then you stop talking, because you are 16 and out of words, and you stand there in the folded napkin silence with your service in this house held out in your 2 hands like a plate. Mrs. Ashworth turns the lid over once more. She looks at it a long time. My grandmother, she says at last, mended china with white lead and flour. Croydon receipt. I'd know the seam anywhere. A pause. You could carry coal through. It's a good mend. The line's clean, the chip's true. You'd want morning light and a reason to find it. She sets the lid on the pot, notched to the handle where it lived all summer. 6pence comes off the quarter for the breakage, Ellen, because that's the book, and the book is the book in this house, or nothing is. Nothing comes off for the mend. And then she does look at you, and her face is the face from Mafeking night, the one watching something not in the street. But hear this once, because I'll say it once. A chip is a Tuesday. A concealment is a character. You sat at my tea table 5 months with a lie glued in lead, and it held, And that's the worst part, that it held, because now you know it can. Don't learn that lesson. Unlearn it. In my service, or anyone's, the crack you tell me about is mended. The crack you hide is broken. Do you understand the difference? Yes, ma'am. I believe you do. She closes the closet, turns the key, and then, already halfway to the door, delivers the last of it over her shoulder in the account book voice, so that it takes you a moment to hear what it is. It was well done, the mend. My grandmother would have taken you on 6pence off the quarter, 4 napkins refolded, and the strange lightness of a girl who has carried a teapot lid on her chest since May and set it down at last. Mrs. Prout had it right, back over the June mutton, word for word. You'll notice that about Mrs. Prout all your life. Arthur comes home Wednesday ahead of his guests, and the house holds its breath from the sound of the cab wheels, and here is what no bunting tells you. The man who puts his kit bag down in the hall of 9 Milton Road is browner than his photograph, and leaner, and quieter, and older by a great deal more than 10 months, and when Beatrice launches at him, he catches her and swings her and laughs, and the laugh is right, and then it stops a second too early like a clock with a worn tooth. He shakes your hand. He shakes your hand, Ellen, miss, the maid. Wait till Ada hears, and thanks you for his room, which he says is better kept than he left it, and something crosses his face when he sees the bicycle standing pumped and ready, that you file away without understanding. At the supper you carry in the goose and pour from the mended pot and the Rockingham reins on the sideboard, and the uncles want the war, they lean in for it. Dorncop, man. Tell us about Dorncop. And Arthur gives them Dorncop the way you give change from a shilling quick exact over. What he talks about when he talks is Pretoria's fruit trees, and a Kaffir boy who could whistle any bird on the veldt, and the cold of the high plains at night, stars down to the ground on every side, and enteric. He says the word once, and his mother's cup stops in the air. Enteric took more of us than the Mausers ever did, and then he catches the table's face and turns it into a joke about Army Biscuit, and the table laughs, grateful, and moves on to the election. Later, clearing, you pass the dining room door and hear the father and the son alone with the whisky that comes out twice a year, and Mr. Ashworth is saying quietly, "The office will have you back the 1st of the month. Your desk's not been touched." And Arthur is saying yes, and thank you, and that's right, and there is a silence after it that is not any of those words, and the tin comes to rest. Last thing that night, guests gone, gas low. Arthur takes from his kit bag a small flat box, red and gold and blue, scratched and dented and 1100 miles older than its picture in the newspapers, the Queen's head embossed on the lid, and he puts it in his mother's 2 hands in the parlour, in front of the photograph of the boy trying to look stern. Nobody eats a square of it. Nobody so much as works the lid. Mrs. Ashworth sets it on the mantel in the space that has stood empty since August, Victoria Regina facing the room, and steps back and looks at it the way the ladies at church look at the east window. "We'll open it," she says, "when the war is over. All of us. Together." Everyone says the war is nearly over. Everyone has said it all year. The tin sits down on the mantel to wait, and you will dust it carefully around the Queen's raised face every day for longer than any person standing in that warm room could bear to be told. And the person who will finally open it is not in the room at all. You bank the range 1/2 and 2, and go up the dark stairs past the second best bedroom, where for the first time in your service there is breathing behind the door, and up to your attic, and lie on the church and the railway embankment, 16 years old, 6pence poorer, somehow pounds lighter, listening to a house that is, for one night anyway, complete. Every bed full, every clock wound, every secret told, or nearly every one. The house breathes. You breathe with it. Winter's coming up the line. It comes up the line the way everything comes to this house, as work. By the middle of November, the dark owns both ends of the day. You rise by candlelight and you lock up by lamplight, and in between there is a smoke-brown noon that never quite commits to being daylight. The kitchen gas burns from 3:30 in the afternoon. The hall lamp is lit at 4, and the range eats like a horse now, because every can of water starts colder, every room starts colder, every coat that comes through the front door brings the cold in, folded up inside it and shakes it out in the hall. Fires in the dining room from breakfast onward now, and in the master bedroom on Saturday nights, carried up glowing in a shovel, walking slow, watching the sparks. The parlour still goes without, visitors accepted, and on the first and third Tuesdays you light it at 2, and the ladies sit a little nearer the grate than they sat in May, and nobody says the word economy, the same way nobody at sea says the word drowning. There are mornings that month when the fog comes down the way it only comes down in London, yellow-grey, tasting of sulphur and old pennies, thick enough that from the front step you cannot see Ada kneeling on hers, only hear her brush going, 8 feet away in another world. The milk cart comes up at a walking pace, the milkman leading the horse by the bridle, and everything you wipe indoors that day wipes black. Fog is coal smoke. When all's said and done, a million grates breathing out together with no wind to carry it off. On the worst days you can taste London in the bread and butter. Everyone can. Nobody mentions it. November is also the month you finally take the measure of the one room you've never been told to understand. Because there is a 7th room in this house, sort of. A room nobody counted when they told you 6. The slip room over the front hall, up the 5 stairs past the half landing, 8 feet by 6, with a window like a picture frame looking straight down on the whitened step. Mr. Ashworth calls it the study. The family calls it Father's room. You clean it every day and enter it, otherwise never. Take the inventory, because it is short and it is him. A plain deal desk, stained and grained to pass for mahogany in a poor light, which is the middle classes in a single piece of furniture. The letter scales, brass exact. The post office directory thick as a pulpit Bible. A pen wiper in the shape of a daisy that Beatrice made when she was 7, worn to a grey rag now, kept where it can be seen. A briar pipe that is smoked only in this room with the door shut. One pipe of thin navy shag on a Friday evening, because Mrs. Ashworth holds that smoke gets into curtains, and that pipe is the entire catalogue of Mr. Ashworth's vices. There is no grate in the slip room, only a small paraffin stove you fill and trim, and on winter Fridays he sits over it with a rug across his knees like a man in a third-class carriage. In the house he pays £34 a year for. And on the shelf above the desk sits a black japanned deed box with a brass lock, and inside that box, though it has never once been opened in your sight, live the papers this family is actually built on. The lease, the birth lines and the marriage lines, the life policy. A clerk of all men ensures. If the 813 ever fails, Mr. Ashworth, in the way trains occasionally and terribly fail, that box is the whole of the wall between this household and the terraces by the railway, and everyone under this roof knows exactly where it is without ever looking at it, the way people know where the church is. The Friday sittings run long this November. You carry his cocoa up at 9, knock soft and short, and there it all is under the green-shaded lamp, the notebook open, the columns marching, coal written in where coal never used to need a line of its own. £280 does not stretch the way it stretched 2 winters ago, and the stretching is done here in ink, in silence. Once this month, lifting the cup off your tray, he does something out of the ordinary. He asks you a question. "What does your father do, Ellen?" "Hop farms," you tell him. "Paddock wood." "Casual work since his back went." Mr. Ashworth nods slowly. "Weather trade," he says. "Hard trade." A pause, the stove ticking. "They all are at the bottom of them. Mine has a roof over it. That is the whole of the difference, whatever anyone in a frock coat tells you." Then, "Thank you for the cocoa," which means good night, which means go. You go down the 5 stairs, understanding that you have just been shown the real notebook, the one he keeps behind his eyes. One line of it anyway. The last Sunday of November is Stir-Up Sunday, and Mrs. Ashworth keeps it the way her mother kept it. The puddings are made that week, because a pudding wants a month to ripen in its cloth. So Monday evening the kitchen fills with the smell of stoned raisins and grated sweet and stout, and the great yellow bowl comes out, and everyone in the house stirs, east to west, the way the wise men travelled, and everyone wishes. Beatrice wishes out loud for the war to be over and a bicycle of her own, and Ada could have told her you must never say it, or you lose it. Arthur stirs twice and wishes nothing anyone can see, and is a long time about it. Mr. Ashworth stirs like a man signing something. Mrs. Ashworth drops in the silver 3-penny bit, and the luck sinks out of sight into the dark of it, and last of all the spoon comes to you because you are part of the house on Stir-Up Sunday, if on no other day, and you stir east to west and you wish. You don't say yours either, but your wish has a velvet collar on it, and it is dark green. The 3rd week of November brings the gale. It comes up from the southwest on a Tuesday night and works the whole street over like a bailiff, and at 2 in the morning there a crack over your head, then a slithering rush, then a smash of slate in the garden, and the loose slate over the landing, the one you've listened to since your first morning in this house, has finally stopped talking. What it leaves behind is a gap, and what comes through the gap is a November. By the time you've got your candle lit, there's a drip at the foot of your bed, and it has found the corner of your mattress, and your stomach goes over like the teapot lid, because the wet is walking up the ticking the way wet does, toward the head, toward the seam. You have the tin box out from under the bed, and the savings book out of the seam in less time than it takes to tell it, and the book is damp at one corner only, and you sit the rest of that roaring night with it inside your nightgown against your chest like a hen, while the drip fills the washstand basin you set to catch it. And before 6 you're down at the range, and the book lies open on a clean cloth on the fender, leaf by leaf, drying while you rake and riddle and lay and light, 1/2 and 2, and the copper plate has run a little where July was, but the sums hold, the sums hold. The landlord's man comes Thursday with 2 slates and lime mortar, and Mrs. Ashworth remarks that it has cost her nothing but 2 days of weather in her attic, by which she means yours, and that night the book goes back into the seam wrapped in a piece of oiled paper off the bacon, washed and dried and folded twice. A girl in service learns. The house has had one look at the only thing you own. You don't mean to give it a second. It's in the last week of November, in the iron dark before 7, that the removal van comes to number 23. No bunting for this one. You're out on the step with the hearthstone when it draws up. 2 horses, board sides, and the men go in quiet as undertakers, and out come the piano and the aspidistra and the hall stand and the beds, all of a household's insides carried into the street in 25 minutes, which is all it takes, it turns out, to turn a home back into a van load. The family goes before the milk. Nobody waves them off, and that isn't coldness, it's manners. The street gives them nobody watching. Mrs. Prout called it back in April over the ringer. You can read a street's fortune in its steps, and the step at 23 had gone grey as porridge by summer. Rent, Mrs. Prout reckons, or the husband's situation, or both. And £30 a year is the width of the crack, same as it ever was. For the rest of the winter, number 23 stands empty, its windows getting that dead-eyed look empty windows get, and every time you kneel to your own step you can see it up the road, going greyer, a tooth gone from the terrace's smile. The house must look as if it cleans itself, and when there's no one left to do the looking after, you can watch a house stop pretending in about a fortnight. Arthur is back at his desk in Cheapside, and has been since the first of the month, and the 813 carries 2 Ashworths now, 2 black coats going down the hill in step. By day, the house is what it was. It's the nights that are different. You know the difference by now between the house breathing and the house going wrong, and this is neither. This is the house holding somebody. Twice, 3 times a week, somewhere past 2 in the morning, the boards in the second best bedroom take up a slow traffic. Window to door and back, quiet even. A sentry's beat. And sometimes the sash goes up softly, and there is pipe smoke in the frost. And in the morning the room is aired, and the bed rumpled correctly, and nothing is said by anyone to anyone. Once, on a Saturday dusk, coming up the garden from the coal shed with a scuttle in each hand, you hear, low, from the bare lilac by the privy path, a whistle. 3 notes, down, up, over. No English bird says it. Arthur is standing at the fence with his pipe cold in his hand, whistling the veldt into a South London garden, and the gas flares in the kitchen window behind you, and he stops and says, "Evening, Ellen, mind the ice on the path," and goes in. You file it away, next to the look he gave the bicycle. The bicycle's tyres have gone soft again, both of them. Mrs. Ashworth has not asked you to pump them. Some things a house knows to leave, and it's a November tea time, wet dark at the windows and the lamp lit, Beatrice at the kitchen table over her exercise book, that the girl looks up at you and asks another of her splinter questions. "Ellen, where do you sit? In the evenings, I mean?" "Here, miss, the chair by the range." "But that's where you work." "Yes, miss." She frowns at that, the way she frowns at a sum that won't come right no matter whose fault it is, and you go on cutting bread and butter, and she goes back to long division, and the range ticks, and that is all. But you bank it, the way you bank everything. Somewhere inside that frown 20 years early, a question is getting itself born, and it isn't only about you. December comes in on a north wind, and the north wind goes through this house finding every gap it owns, and one night in the middle of December the house goes wrong at last. Quietly, in the dark, in the one place you've been watching all year, and you're the only one awake. The frost sets in hard the second week of the month. Ice ferns grow on the inside of your attic window, and you scrape a peephole with your thumbnail to see whether the world is still there. The coalman comes, and the price is 31 shillings the ton now, and Mrs. Ashworth takes 1 ton where she wanted 2, and the cellar sounds hollower under the pavement every time the shovel goes in. Cinders sifted twice. Fire slacked with damp small coal and peelings. The house burning money to stay respectable, and every house in the terrace doing the same. It's a Thursday night, the hardest frost yet when it happens, Locking up is a liturgy by now, and you could do it in your sleep. Bolts, chains, larder, lamps, range banked, half and two. Last of all, the parlour, because last of all is always the parlour, your thumb on the taps of both gas brackets, the nightly touch nobody knows you make. You come through the hall with your candle and you are 3 feet from the parlour door when the smell meets you. Not the whisper you know, that faint sourish breath, the headache smell, the one Mr. Ashworth couldn't find in April. This has weight. This is a presence, standing in the dark on the other side of the door, and your skin knows before your head does, because your skin stops you walking. Count your matches, Mrs. Prout said. Gas is a good servant and a bad master. You were told months ago that you'd know it when you smelled it. You know it. You go back and set the candle down on the hall floor by the baize door, right back, the flame small and steady and far away from you, and you go into the parlour in the dark on held breath, by touch. 9 steps to the window, past the piano, your eyes stinging, your head already going tight at the temples. The sash screams with frost, but it comes up, and the December night falls into the room like clean water. Then the brackets. The right-hand tap is home and hard. The left-hand one, the whisperer, the one by the window, turns loose under your fingers. No seat left in it at all, spinning past the place where off should be. So it isn't off, because it can't be off, because there is no off in it anymore. You leave it and go for the meter, because the meter is the throat of the whole house, and you know where it lives. At the cellar head, under the stairs, a brass cock stiff as a church door. Both hands, quarter turn, done. Then up the main stairs in the dark, and you knock at the master bedroom, and this time the knock is not soft and short. You knock until the line of candlelight wakes under the door. There's gas got loose in the parlour, sir. The left-hand bracket. I've opened the window and I've turned it off at the meter. I didn't take my candle past the hall. Mr. Ashworth stands in the doorway in his dressing gown for a moment, with his face still half in sleep, and then the sentence reaches him. All of it in its right order, and you watch it land. He goes down. He stands in the parlour doorway in the cold and the dark, smelling what's left of it, the fog of it thinning out of the window over his wife's lace curtains, and he is very quiet. Quite right, he says at last, and then again, as if the first one hadn't covered it. Quite right. The parlour stands open to the frost all night, and the aspidistra spends it in the kitchen like an evacuee. Nobody sleeps much. In the morning the man comes from the gas company whistling bag of tools and stops whistling once he has the bracket apart. The thread on the union is gone, and the tap has no seat left to it, worn to nothing. Weeping since the summer, he says, on and off, worse, with the frost. Then he says the thing you will hear in your chest for a week. Whoever's been turning her hard off at nights, he says, wiping his hands, has likely been keeping this room from filling since October. Another month of it, and one match at the wrong hour, and you'd have had the front of the house out in the garden near enough. 6 shillings the bill. There'll be a fitter in at 6 shillings, Mrs. Prout said in April, and somehow it'll be you that broke it. She was right about the fitter and the 6 shillings, and wrong for once about the last part, and you are glad she was wrong and gladder still she was right, because it was her sentence about counting matches that stood you still in that hallway. At breakfast, Mr. Ashworth addresses the marmalade. It appears, he says, that country noses are sound instruments after all. From him that is an apology with its collar starched. Beatrice, who has extracted the whole story twice before 8 o'clock, says, "Ellen saved our lives, didn't she, father? and Mr. Ashworth folds his paper and considers it, fairly, like a claim at the office. Ellen turned a tap, he says, at the right time, in the right order, which is generally what saving lives amounts to. And that evening, passing you in the passage with the keys ringing at her waist, Mrs. Ashworth stops. The fitter tells me the parlour has been weeping gas since the summer, she says, and that somebody has been shutting it hard off every night, on her own authority. A pause you could carry coal through. Whose authority? Mine, ma'am. Keep it. 2 words, and the keys ring on down the passage. In April you remembered every praising word and counted them on one hand. Somewhere in the last month you have stopped counting. That is its own kind of news. And then it's Christmas. And Christmas in this house is work wearing tinsel. But it is also, you have to give it this, Christmas. Holly over the pictures, ivy along the mantels, and Walter comes up the road. Christmas Eve morning with sprigs of holly tied to the churns, tipping his cap over the wall at Ada until she drops a peg. Sydney arrives Christmas Eve with the goose, carrying it up the path like a drum major. Compliments of the season, Ellen, and Mr. Mott says, mind. The giblets is inside. Carol singers come with a lantern after dark and stand at the gate doing while shepherds, watched in 4 different keys, and Beatrice is allowed out to the step in her coat to give them pennies, and Mr. Ashworth takes his first whisky of the 2 the year allows him. Christmas Day is church, and then the goose, and you cook it, and carry it, and the pudding comes in burning blue with brandy that Mrs. Ashworth measures like laudanum, and this once, by standing instruction, you take your own dinner sitting down at the kitchen table with a glass of raisin wine sent down, and the slice of pudding that comes out to you has the silver 3-penny bit in it. You nearly swallow it. Luck of the year, finder keeps it. That's the rule of the pudding, and even Mrs. Ashworth's book has no page against it. It goes into the seam that night with the savings book. The first money you have ever owned that isn't for anything. It is not for the coat. It is not for the fare. It is for luck, which is a thing it turns out you can own. On Boxing Day there is a paper twist with 5 shillings in it. The Christmas box, and a handkerchief hemmed crooked with an E in chain stitch that cost Beatrice real suffering. And from Mrs. Prout a pair of grey knitted mittens with 1 thumb longer than the other. And to Mrs. Prout you give a 1/4 pound of good tea bought with your own money. And she looks at it and says, "Well then, Nelly," and puts it away quick. And that is how the 2 of you leave it, which is how the 2 of you would want it. And between Christmas and the year's end comes the review. The dining room, the account book open, the gas low. You stand with your hands folded, and Mrs. Ashworth looks at you a long moment over the columns. "You came to me green as spring grass," she says. "You have cost me 6pence for a breakage, and a fitter's bill I would have paid 10 times over. From the quarter, 14 pounds, and then, closing the book on its ribbon, in the account book voice that you have learned carries her meaning the way plain paper carries a banknote. My compliments to your mother, Ellen. She raised a careful girl. 14 pounds, 2 pounds more a year, 3 shillings more a month for the seam if you hold the postal orders steady. You write to Paddock Wood that Sunday with the news, and your mother's answer, when it comes, is 1 line longer than usual, and the line says, 'We are proud of you, Ellen. Mind your hands in the soda. You keep that letter. You have a place for it. On the last night of the year, the bells ring the century out. Not just one church. All of them, near and far, ringing the 19th century into the dark over the rooftops, because 1901, the papers have argued it all December and the arithmetic won, is the true turning and you are awake for it, at your attic window with the blanket round your shoulders and the ice fern melted under your palm, watching the gas lamps burn down Milton Road, listening to 100 Years' End. You, Ellen Draper, general servant, have scrubbed the last doorstep of the 19th century and will scrub the first of the 20th, and both of them are the same step, and somehow that is the funniest and the truest thing you know, and you laugh once quietly alone, 16 in the dark between 2 centuries. What you cannot know, breathing on the glass, is that the new century will be 22 days old when it does the thing nobody in this street, this city, this empire can properly imagine. January is the month your attic finally does the thing Ada always swore hers did. You wake in the black of the third week and break a skin of ice on the washstand jug with your knuckles, a true skin, whole, that comes away in a piece like a little window, and you hold it up in the candlelight for a second before it melts through your fingers, and you think, with a sort of grim housekeeping pride, there, mine does it too. Meaner than yours after all, Ada. And it's that same week, the Saturday, that Mr. Ashworth reads the bulletin from the paper at breakfast in a voice that makes Beatrice put her toast down. The Queen is unwell at Osborne, on the Isle of Wight. Her strength diminished. The physicians in attendance. Words with black borders already growing round them. And here is what you have to understand. She has reigned 63 years. Mr. Ashworth is 47. Mrs. Prout is 55. Neither has drawn one breath under another sovereign. There is nobody in this house, nobody in this street, hardly anybody in this whole roaring city of 6 million who has ever lived an hour in an England that wasn't hers. She's on the coins in the housekeeping purse, and the stamps on your mother's letters, and the tin on the parlour mantel. Asking London to imagine the Queen dying is like asking it to imagine the Thames stopping. The bulletins come Sunday and Monday, each one lower than the last, and the city goes quiet the way a room goes quiet around a bed. And on Tuesday, the 22nd of January, 1901, the day itself goes on being an ordinary day, because days do. The range, the slops, the mutton, the lamps at 4. Mr. Ashworth comes home on the 6:40 with the evening paper and the word sinking, and supper is eaten mostly in silence. And at somewhere past 9, as you're banking the range, you hear it start. A church bell tolling. Not ringing, tolling. The slow single strokes with the long dark space between them, and then another bell further off takes it up, and another, and the doors come open all down Milton Road exactly as they came open on Mafeking night. The same doors, the same people, and this is the other sound. No cornet, no flag. The street stands in its gardens in the cold and listens to the bells walk their slow strokes across South London, and Mr. Ashworth goes out to the gate and takes his hat off to the dark, and Beatrice sits down on the stairs in her nightgown and cries the way children cry at grief they've caught from the air, honestly and without understanding, and Mrs. Ashworth stands in the hall with her hand at her brooch and says, quietly, to nobody, "She was queen before my mother was born." Later, last thing, you go into the parlour to check the tap that no longer needs checking, because habit is habit, and your candle finds the mantle, the photograph of Arthur trying to look stern, and beside it the tin Victoria Regina, the small raised face you have dusted around every day since October. The Queen outlived by her own chocolate box, the promise on the mantel outliving the woman on the lid. We'll open it when the war is over, all of us, together. The war is not over. And now, whatever evening that promise is finally kept, she will not be on the throne for it. You stand there a moment, and the house ticks around you, and you go up to bed through a world that changed while you were banking the range. And when I say mourning, I need you to understand what that means in 1901. This is not a black ribbon and a sad half hour. This is a whole nation changing its clothes. Within 2 days, there is not a yard of black stuff to be had in the drapers' shops of London. Counters stripped, women queuing for crepe the way they queued for war news. And Mrs. Ashworth spends a morning with the dye pot, turning a brown dress black in the copper, and your black afternoon dress, the one that opens the door, is suddenly the most correct garment in the house. The shops put up shutters, the theatres close, even the horses wear black rosettes on their blinkers. Sidney comes up the path Thursday without his whistle, the first silent delivery in your whole acquaintance, a band of black crape round his sleeve that Mr. Motts's wife sewed for the whole shop, and he hands over the meat and stands there a moment and says, "She's on the money, Ellen." And then, working it out as he says it, her actual head, on the money and the stamps and your Arthur's tin, and now she's gone and the head'll just stay there. He shakes his own head, mounts, wobbles and rides off slow, no tune at all, and that is the boy's whole eulogy, and you have heard worse ones from pulpits. On the Thursday they proclaim the new king, Edward VII, at St. James's with trumpets, and the word king sits in every mouth like a foreign coin. Nobody under 70 has ever said God save the king and meant a living man. The funeral is Saturday, the 2nd of February. The Queen comes up from the island the day before, her coffin carried across the Solent through 2 lines of warships, minute guns rolling flat across the water, and on the Saturday she's to be borne across London, from Victoria Station to Paddington, and then away to Windsor. And Mrs. Ashworth, keeper of the keys, government of your world, does a thing that tells you everything about the size of the day. She gives you it, all of it. Every servant in London will be on the streets, she says, and mine shall not be the exception. You'll go with Ada, you'll keep hold of one another, and you'll be inside this house by dark. The family goes up together after an early breakfast, all 4 in full black, to stand with the office families at Hyde Park. And you and Ada, black dresses, black gloves borrowed off her mistress, go up on the train with half of Herne Hill, packed in like herrings, nobody talking above a murmur, everything in black, London under a sky like a pewter plate. You will try, years from now, to tell people about the silence, and you will watch them fail to believe you. 1 million people, some say more, standing along the miles of the route, banked 20 deep, on rooftops, up lampposts, boys, in the bare trees of the park like rooks, and no sound, no cheering, no singing, no crying even, or none you can hear. The lampposts and balconies are wound not in black, but in purple cloth with white bows, because she asked for that, no black. And the strangeness of it, all that royal purple under a grey sky, makes the streets look like a church turned inside out. You and Ada are at the edge of it all, far back, pressed against a railing in the park with a wall of broadcloth shoulders in front of you, and you see it the way a servant sees everything, sideways, in pieces, and completely. The minute guns thudding somewhere over the trees felt in your breastbone more than heard. The troops lining the way, motionless, arms reversed, heads bowed over their rifle butts. Then the slow music coming, dead marches walking nearer at the pace of the horses and the gun carriage, and on it under the white pall and the crown and sceptre catching what light there is, the coffin. And here is the thing that undoes you, the thing nobody warned you of. It is small, smaller than any bed you've ever made, all of it. The 63 years, the empire the maps colour red, the age itself with her name on it, going by on a gun carriage behind 8 cream horses, in a box shorter than Beatrice is tall, and behind it on horseback the new king, and at the new king's side, given the place of honour, her grandson the German emperor, come from Berlin to bury his grandmother, and London this morning loves him for it. You do not yet know, and nobody packed on these pavements knows, what the world will do with the next 14 years. This morning he is a grandson on a grey horse, with his arm withered at his side and his face set, and the crowd's silence takes him in with all the rest. And then it has passed. That's the way of processions. They are years coming and a minute going. The silence holds until the gun carriage is well up the road, and then it doesn't so much break as let out its breath. A low tide noise of 1,000,000 people remembering their feet are frozen, and Ada, who has not made a sound in an hour, is crying without any noise at all. And so, you discover, are you? You have now heard London make both of its great sounds 8 months apart, the roar it made for Mafeking and this. And of the two, this is the one you will carry. Getting home takes 3 hours. Everything shut, everything black. The train's like the inside of a hearse. The family comes in frozen at dusk, and you have the range roaring, and what happens then has never happened before, and will never exactly happen again. You make cocoa for 6 and they drink it in the kitchen. All of them. The mistress, the master, Arthur with his back against the dresser, Beatrice asleep inside 10 minutes with her head on the scrub table, in the warmest room in the house, your room, the engine room. Because on the day they buried the century there is 1 hour when even this family cannot be bothered with the geography of upstairs and down. Nobody says anything worth writing down. That's not what the hour is for. Arthur carries Beatrice up to bed, and Mrs. Ashworth, leaving, pauses at the baize door and looks back at the kitchen, at the range, at you, and says, "Good night, Ellen," which she has said perhaps 5 times in a year and is gone. The Queen is buried at Windsor on the Monday. On the Tuesday, the blinds go up all down Milton Road, and the milk comes at 7, and the range wants raking at 6 because grief is grief and breakfast is breakfast. "Queens change, Nelly," says Mrs. Prout over the ringer that week. Greats don't. And the new century, 3 weeks old, dressed all in black, rolls up its sleeves and goes back to work. February passes quiet. A street in black going about its business, and the evenings begin, by inches, to loosen their grip. You notice it through the work. The lamps lit at 4:30, then 5. The war shrinks to small print, columns chasing a Boer general called De Wet across the maps all month and never quite catching him. And over by Christmas has become a thing nobody says at all, about anything. Coal comes down a shilling in March, the Friday account book closes earlier, and 1 week you hear, through the dining room door, a sound you have never once heard on a Friday. Mrs. Ashworth humming. And March is the month the bicycle moves. You go in on the Tuesday to do Arthur's room, and the wall where it has leaned since January of last year is empty, and your heart does something complicated before your head catches up. He took it. Out before 7 on a Saturday, gone the whole day, back at dusk with mud to the eyebrows and a tear in his cuff, and his face burned red by wind, and at supper he talks the whole meal about a hill in Surrey that nearly killed him twice, and a pub in Westerham that sold him bread and cheese and the worst cider in the home counties, and the table laughs, and this time you hear it plainly from the passage. The laugh runs all the way to its end. no worn tooth. The fixture card for the new Surrey season appears on the mantel edge in the second best bedroom, and the tyres stay hard now, because he pumps them himself Saturday nights, whistling. And one April dusk from the scullery window, you see him at the lilac with Beatrice, teaching her the Velt bird, 3 notes, down, up, over, both of them laughing when it goes wrong, and you understand at last what crossed his face in October at the sight of the thing standing there pumped and ready. It was somebody else's welcome. The house had kept a boy's room for him, and he came back a man, and it has taken him all winter to learn you can be both. You file it away, and this time you understand what you've filed. The book in the seam says £1.13 3 at the end of March. The rule was £2, but on your March evening out you walk past the draper's in Brixton, the way you have walked past it once a month since September, and there in the window is the coat, your coat, the dark green wool with a velvet collar like a cat's back, and pinned to it a ticket that says, in red, reduced, winter stock, £1 1 shilling. You stand on the pavement and do the arithmetic the way this year has taught you, fast in your fingers' ends. Coat, £1 1. Left in the book, 12 and 3. Fairholme third class, presents for your mother and the boys, and April and May's deposit still to come before Whitsun. It comes out right twice over. Not either anymore. Both. The rule said £2 first, but the rule was made by a girl pricing a coat at 8 and 6 dearer, and a rule you make yourself is the only kind nobody can sack you from, and it turns out it's also the only kind you're allowed to improve. You go in. The same shopwalker who came out to look at you in September wraps it in brown paper and string and doesn't remember you at all, and that's fine. You remember for both of you. You wear it to church that Sunday evening. Dark green wool, velvet collar, over the mended gloves, and you sit in your usual pew at the back with the other maids of the parish, and out of habit you fold your hands one inside the other, small, out of sight. And somewhere in the second hymn you stop. They're the same hands, rough at the knuckle, scarred at the wrist. They are also the hands that lit 300 fires and turned one tap in the right order, and carried this coat into this pew all by themselves, and you sing the third verse with your hands open in your lap like anybody. Ada's verdict comes over the wall on Monday. You look 18 at least, and Walter has a cousin. No, you tell her, laughing, and she grins and lets it lie. Ada has news of her own that spring. Walter has spoken, official, spoken to her father official, and there's a ring with a garnet in it that lives on a ribbon round her neck under her print dress on working days, and the plan stands as it always stood, 2 more years' service and the second milk round, and then my own step, and I'll do it singing. In April the new people come to number 23. A van, a young couple, him something in tea in the city, and behind them, carrying a bird cage and a carpet bag, a scrap of a girl from Somerset, 13 years old, in a coat she'll grow into 2 years from now. You watch her first step from your own, a week later. She does it wrong, wet knees, streaks in the whiting, crying before 7 with her back to the street, because she thinks that hides it. And you finish your own step and walk up the road with your hearthstone and your sack, and you kneel down next to her the way, 14 months ago, nobody knelt down next to you, and you show her. Fold the sack twice, work the stone in circles, then edge to edge, and never on a wet knee. You teach her the trick of it the way Mrs. Prout taught you the damper hand over hand. It gets easier, you tell her, which was a lie the first time you heard it, and is true now, and is somehow both at once, forever. And both of those things are what the sentence is for. She sniffs and wipes her face with her wrist and says, "Does it?" And you say what there is to say, which is, "You'll know your own house in the dark by Christmas. That's not nothing. The whole street edged in kneeling girls like a hem being stitched, and now you're the old hand in the row. It happens that fast. Nobody tells you that. It happens that fast. The war has its hand back in the house's pocket by April too, deeper than ever. The Chancellor's new budget goes up on the 18th, and Mr. Ashworth reads it out over the marmalade in the voiceman keep for deaths in the family. Income tax up again, 1 and 2 in the pound now, and a duty clapped on sugar itself, and even the coal going out of the country taxed at the docks. Sugar. Mrs. Fenn called it at the At Home a year ago. Sugar sure to follow if the Chancellor has his way, and on Tuesday fortnight she will have the pleasure, over the seed cake of having been right, which sweetens a lady's tea better than sugar ever did. Mrs. Ashworth hears the budget out to the end and says nothing, and that Friday the account book and the gas burn late again, and the sugar goes on living in the caddy under the smallest key on the ring, where it has lived all along, because Mrs. Louisa Ashworth was economising on sugar before the Chancellor of the Exchequer had thought of it. Sidney turns up an inch taller that spring, his voice gone down a floor, and there's a new tune on him at last. Something from the halls about a bird in a gilded cage murdered just as slowly, and it stops you with a parcel of chops in your hands one morning to realise you haven't heard "Soldiers of the Queen" come up that path since January, and you'll never hear it again. Not from him. He doesn't talk about the recruiting office anymore. He wants to drive a motor van now. Mr. Mott says motors will never answer for meat. Sidney says Mr. Mott said the same about the telephone. Privately you'd back Sidney. And then it is an April morning, and the alarm clock says 5:45, and you strangle it with the speed of a girl strangling a chicken, and you lie for exactly 10 seconds in the dark, listening, and the house ticks and settles around you, breathing, nothing wrong in it, and somewhere far off the 5:52 rolls empty up toward Holborn Viaduct, and the milkman's 2 notes come up the road, and it is to the day a year. A year since that first April morning you woke in this attic and the smell hit you in layers. The smell is the same. You are not. You go down through the sleeping house, past Beatrice's door, past the master bedroom, past the second best with its breathing, skipping the creek like a heron, your candle throwing the giant of you up the wall, and you rake and riddle and lay and light, 1/2 and 2, tap, tap, and the flame creeps and catches and roars softly, and the first warmth of the day touches your face like something you have to earn, because you did, because you have, 365 times, give or take, and the house must look as if it cleans itself, and it still must, and it still doesn't, and it has you. On a quiet evening late that April, work done, supper cleared, lamps not yet wanted, you sit on the back step with the last of the teapot, your teapot, the servant's pot, and watch the garden go blue. The lilac is coming into leaf again, which is where you came in. Down the terrace a piano works at something slow. Next door Ada sings flat over her washing up, and a train goes down the cutting carrying the city home to its suppers. And you sit with the cup cooling in your 2 ruined, useful hands and take the year's inventory, piece by piece, because you are the only one who reads every page. Mrs. Prout's forearms and her fork raised over the cold mutton. Serve the house. Don't be the house. Ada's garnet on its ribbon. Sidney's tunes. The little maid at 23 who got her step white as a laid-out shirt front this morning and looked down the road to see if you'd seen, and you'd seen. the ladies on the edges of the parlour chairs, and Mrs. Fenn being right about sugar. The man on the 813 with his rug over his knees on Friday nights, holding a family above water with a pen. The woman with the keys who said keep it and meant the only thing she has to give. The boy who came back browner and older and is teaching his sister to whistle like a veldt bird. The girl who asks where you sit. A house is a small thing. 6 rooms, a scullery, an attic, a slip room, nobody counts. And a house contains everything. The entire world pulled in through one front door and one back, and you carry all of it, upstairs and down, every day. Tomorrow there will be the range, first, always, half and two. Tomorrow there will be the step and the slops and the 38 climbs and the black lead and the bells. Tomorrow there will be Tuesday's ironing and Friday's rods and Monday's copper. The same as this week, the same as next week, the same as all the weeks stretching out ahead toward Whitsun, when you will get off the train at Paddock Wood in a green coat with a velvet collar, presents in your box £2 odd in the Bank of the King himself, and your mother will see you on the platform and not know you for one whole second, and then know you completely. But that's tomorrow, and that's May. Right now there's just this, a warm step, a cooling cup, a blue garden, a street full of pianos and washing up, and the long, ordinary, extraordinary tiredness of a girl who's worked from 6 to 9 and will do it again, and can. You bank the range last thing, and bolt the doors, and put out the lamps, and lay your thumb one moment on the parlour tap, out of habit, though the fitting's new and sound and sings sweetly when it's lit. The house is safe. The house is safe because you made it safe, and nobody knows, and that is the bargain, and tonight the bargain feels for once fair. You go up through the dark with your candle, past all the breathing doors, up the attic stair, and you lie down on the church and the railway embankment 16 years old, in the first spring of the new century, and the flock mattress holds you the way worn things hold you, exactly, in your own shape. The girl who got off the train from Kent with a tin box and a Bible and a written character is still in there, astonished at the size of everything, frightened of the bells. She isn't gone. She's just not the one carrying the tray anymore. The work was seen, the working wasn't, and somewhere between the step and the seam and the tap in the dark, a girl became the thing this whole story has been about. Somebody a house can depend on, somebody a life can depend on, which is the same skill, learned kneeling, warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You have a bed and a wage and a green coat on the hook and a lucky 3p in a seam, and 2 sentences a month, and a street where one small girl watches how you do your step. That is more than most of the world has tonight. That's enough. And here is the secret the year taught you. Enough, held honestly in both hands, is not a small thing. It is the whole thing. The candle goes out. The house ticks. Sleep starts up the attic stairs toward you, skipping the creak, the way everything you love has learned to move. And the story doesn't end here, but it goes on without needing you to watch it. The war will take one more year to lie down, and it will lie down on the last night of May, 1902, with a signature in a house in Pretoria, and London will sing again gentler than Mafeking, wiser by 2.5 years of casualty columns. And on an evening in the first week of June, 1902, the parlour gas lit and singing, the whole household will gather, and the tin will come down from the mantel at last, the promise kept a queen too late, and Mrs. Ashworth will put it, unopened, into the hands of the one person who wasn't in the room the night it came home. Beatrice, who was asleep upstairs in her nightgown, and who has waited longer than anybody. She will work the lid off with her thumbnails. The chocolate will be 2.5 years old, bloomed grey as slate, and every one of them will eat a square anyway, because that was the bargain, and it will taste of tin and dust and 1900, and nobody will mind. And a square will come down to the kitchen on a plate of the second best china, carried by the mistress's own hands, for the girl who dusted the empty 6 inches of mantle, and then a dead queen's raised face. Every day the tin waited, and the pot that pours the tea that evening will be the mended one, the notch turned to the handle holding. Mended things hold, if the mending's honest. That's the house's whole gospel, and you're in it now, and so, by the way, is the teapot. Centuries will pass. Well, one will, and it will be enough. The house you know will change past recognizing. The range will be torn out cold and carted off for scrap, and a white enamel cooker will stand in its place, and then another thing, and another, each one lighting at the turn of a wrist, and no girl will ever again kneel to it at 6 in the dark. The coal-hole plate in the pavement will rust shut over an empty cellar. The bell wires will be ripped out of the walls, the green baize door will go for firewood, and your attic, with the church and the railway embankment in the mattress, will be somebody's warm bathroom, and the people in that house will pay more for it in a year than Mr. Ashworth earned in 10, and they will lie awake some nights listening to it tick and settle, never knowing they're hearing what you heard. Hot water will run uphill into every room at the touch of a finger, and nobody will call it a miracle, and it is one. You, listening to me now, somewhere warm. When you turn a tap tonight and the hot water simply comes, remember that behind every warm tap there used to be a girl with 2 brass cans on a dark stair. She carried it so that eventually nobody would have to. You can put the cans down now. Everyone can put everything down now. But people will still lie awake at night listening to a house settle and be comforted by it. Still keep one room too good to sit in, whatever they've started calling it. Still scrub a doorstep somewhere and judge and be judged. Still work all their lives less for the pounds than for 2 true sentences a month from somebody whose sentences are hard to earn. Still kneel down now and then next to somebody doing it wrong and crying about it, and teach them the trick, hand over hand. Some things don't change. The tiredness at the end of a working day doesn't change, and the sweetness of lying down at the end of it in your own bed, in a house gone quiet, with tomorrow's work waiting but not yet weighing, that doesn't change either. That is yours tonight, the same as it was Ellen's. You've done your day, whatever your day was. The doors are bolted, the gas is off at the main, so let it come. Let sleep take you the way it took Ellen Draper in her attic under the slates on Milton Road. 1.25 centuries ago, 10 seconds after the candle went out, mid-thought, mid-plan, with the whole machine of London breathing around her and the range banked safe below. Let the house around you breathe. Let the world fade. Let the noise quiet. Let your thoughts slow and soften and finally stop. The step is done. The fires are laid for morning. Nothing is asked of you until it's light, and even then, not much, and not yet. You're warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You've earned this rest. Take it, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.